Hello students. In the last video I said we were going to look at division in this video, but just before we do that we better just have a look at squaring negative numbers, because what I have here are two questions that look almost exactly the same, but it turns out they're not, and they have different answers. And in fact, a lot of math teachers, and myself included, sometimes write this when we actually mean that. So often what we're writing on our interactive whiteboards or on our whiteboards or on our blackboards is not correct. So we need to actually have a good look at this, because it's a common mistake and it's an easy one to make. So -3 in brackets squared. Well, that means just squaring the number inside the brackets, which is -3 by -3. Well, as we learned in the last video, if you're multiplying two numbers with the same sign, the answer is positive. So that one simplifies to 9. This one looks the same, but according to the order of operations, that really means the opposite of 3 squared. In other words, we square before we change the sign or take the opposite of something. So that means the negative of, in brackets, 3 squared. Well, 3 squared is 9. So that actually simplifies to -9. Now, let's do this question on a calculator just to show that it actually does give those answers. So I'll do the first one. Square brackets, brackets -3 squared. So there's -3 in brackets all squared. Gives us +9, which is not surprising. But if I then go -3 squared, I get the answer -9. So those two questions, let me get rid of this calculator. Those two questions look similar, but in fact are different. So what I'd like you to do is just have a go at these 4 questions based on that. Okay, so again, if there's brackets, you're squaring a negative number. If there's no brackets, you're squaring a positive number and then taking the opposite. Okay, so stop the video, have a go, and we'll see you back here shortly. Okay, let's have a look at the answers. In the first question, we square first, which is 16. 4 times 4 is 16, and we take the opposite of that. So that's -16. In the second question, we're squaring -4. That's -4 times -4. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, so that's +16. In this question here, I've got a square before I multiply. So again, I'm squaring a negative number. -3 by -3 is 9. Times 2 is +18. And this one here, I square first, which is 9. I then take the negative of that, which is -9. 2 by -9 is -18. So again, the questions look very similar, but in fact they're not, and you've got to be very, very careful when you're squaring negative numbers. Okay, now something else that's useful to know. What if you're going to raise numbers, two negative numbers, to powers, like to the power of 3, to the power of 4, to the power of 5, etc.? So let's have a look at that. So -1 times -1. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times 1 is 1, so that one comes out to be 1. With the next one, we've worked out that that already equals 1. 1 times -1, well, a positive times a negative is a negative, so that's -1. What about this one? Well, here's the basic rule for this, and it should make sense. If you multiply two negatives together, you get a positive. If you multiply 4 negatives together, you also get a positive. If you multiply 6 negatives together, you get a positive answer, etc. Because every time you multiply 2 negatives together, you get a positive. So if there are an even number of -1s, the answer is +1. If there's an odd number of -1s, the answer is -1. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's going to give me -1 when I calculate it. And you might want to put that into your calculator and confirm that. With the next one, well, all of this we've worked out equals -1 times -1 gives us +1. So if the number of ones, so if the number of negative ones that you're multiplying is even, it's going to be a positive answer. If it's odd, it's going to be a negative answer. So knowing that, see if you can work out the answer to those two questions, please. Okay, -1 to the 37th power, because we're multiplying 37 negative ones together, and 37's odd, that's going to be a -1 for the answer. With the second question, because 188 is even, that's going to be a +1 for the answer. Okay, let's extend this idea to numbers other than 1. So I'd like you to use the same reasoning as I did on the previous page with these 4 questions, and see if you can work these out without a calculator. Okay, let's see how you went. Well, first you need to know what 4 cubed is. So 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. And because we've got a negative index, sorry, a negative power, that means, or a negative exponent, that means it's going to be -64. So whenever that power or that exponent or that index is odd, we're going to end up with a negative number. Every time it's even, we're going to end up with a positive number. So with the next question, -3 to the, well, 3 to the power of 4. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81. And because that's an even number, it's going to be +81. 2 to the power of 5 is 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, which is 32. Because that's an odd power, it's going to be -32. And with the last one, we do what's inside the brackets first. -6 squared, or negative times a negative is a positive, so that's +36. And then we take the opposite of that, which is -36. So the point of this video is when you're raising negative numbers to powers, you do have to be fairly careful because it's easy to make a mistake. Okay, we will do some dividing in the next video.